My name's Evie. I studied English and French at St Anne's between 2012 and 2016, and I now work at the Royal College of General Practitioners. So I speak English, obviously, and then apart from that, French, some Spanish, some Italian, very basic Romanian as well. I actually went there to teach English in a summer during my degree, not as part of it, but just at the same time. And so learned a few words to kind of get around, say hello, thank you, learn how to order food. That was very important. And then came back to Oxford and did a few classes to kind of cement some of that, learn a little bit more about the grammar, how it worked as a language. And then French, I've always been drawn to because of the literature. I think, actually, being able to kind of read different things. My French teacher gave me Madame Bovary when I was in sixth form, in lower six. And since then I thought, oh, actually, this is something that has really interested me and there is so much that I would like to read. I knew I wanted to read lots of books and study some language. So English and French kind of tick those boxes for me. And then through my degree, I did more post-colonial studies. So reading lots of literature from different countries all around the world, Caribbean, West African literature. And that made me think a little bit about perhaps working in some of those countries, or perhaps doing some more kind of international development work. So I did a master's at SOAS in development studies, where I got much more of that. But I think it's opened up an awful lot of doors to different things and taught me so many things as well, kind of along the way. And I think those are the things that will be really useful in the future. For me, the really interesting part about a language degree is almost everything you learn whilst learning the language. So you learn what you think are the kind of nuts and bolts of French, for example. You're studying grammar, or you're looking at how to construct a sentence, or kind of learning vocabulary. And actually, while you're doing that, you are also learning how to communicate. You're learning how other people communicate. You're also learning how another culture and another society works and how that is shaped by the language they use, and also the other way around, how that society shapes what their language kind of looks like. When you come to study another language, you suddenly think, oh, that's really interesting. We say, this particular phrase in a totally different way, or thinking about idioms and where they've come from. And it really opens up, I think, a door into another country, another culture, another world. And it makes you very used to kind of chopping and changing, not only between languages, but also between environments, or kind of being able to look at different situations and quite quickly kind of compare and contrast them. So when you're using a language day to day, for example, that's your second or your third language, the way that your brain has to work to be able to do that, I think gives you a real kind of flexibility. The work that I've done over the past few years is lots about communication. And obviously language comes into that in a very kind of obvious way, but having studied multiple languages, there's actually an extra element of being able to kind of know the different ways something can be constructed, or being able to adapt the way that you're communicating to different audiences. Having done that through a degree, that came far more easily to me when I had to do it in a professional setting. And then there's a whole, I think, element of kind of logic and organisation that you have to have when you study a language, especially at degree level. There is a lot of time that you spend, looking at grammar or looking at vocab and thinking, this is actually quite dull, I don't want to do it. But being able to do that, being able to analyze a sentence or being able to work out where things should go or what the kind of, correct format of something is or why it is as well, that kind of logic and analysis has been incredibly useful. So, that's everything from kind of writing content to being able to edit other people's content or kind of oral communication. I've done a lot of presentation work. So that as well has been really, really valuable. So I spent some time in Paris, the whole year really in Paris, about 9 months I think in total. Studied to start with and then worked in a law firm for 5 months kind of towards the end. And both of those experiences I think really shaped not only that year but also the kind of coming years of my life. When you're living and working in a language that is not, again, perhaps your mother tongue or is a second or a third language, being able to do that is really challenging at the start, and you wonder how you ever get through daily life, having to set up a bank account or having to make a phone call or, in French, for example, you say your telephone number in a completely different way than you would for an English telephone number. And there are all these different things that you're learning in those first few weeks and months constantly, and you're bombarded by all of this information. And you're still having to, get the right bus, show up at the right time, actually be able to do your job or kind of understand whatever text you're studying. I think all of that means that you become very adaptable and very flexible and actually quite resilient as well. We feel the need to know so much of a language before we feel confident in actually speaking it and kind of being in that language. And I think that absolutely does not have to be the case. A lot of language as well is more than about the words. It's about, how you are, kind of behaviours, what you do, gestures. There are an awful lot of ways to make yourself understood. And if you have a couple of the basic words of a language, sometimes that's plenty. Absolutely. Do it. Continue it. I think continue it all your life if you can.